I know that we could probably listen to that for another half an hour a day. But yes, we've got other speakers as well. And just one thing that you said, that you sort of said by the by, which I think is not just what you do, is how you do it. And I think that in anything that we do makes a huge difference. It's the way that you do things that can make the difference between success and failure. So thanks for that. Alain, you're up next. Thank you very much. We'll have some time for questions a bit later.
Okay, I'll take some microphone out. Thank you. And the clicker.
There's Mentos here if anyone wants them. The clicker that you...
I have more clickers than you can imagine. It's a collection. They're on my wall.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Right. You sorted.
Yes. Thank you very much for inviting me here. It's a, you know, when I was invited by Percival, I thought that, you know, I may not be very competent to address this audience because my specialty is not crime. But Percival convinced me that maybe if I talk about city structure, which is my specialty, that it will be relevant to the type of problem you are dealing with. So I will start right away. This is the outline I'm going to follow. Cities, I explain, you know, the structure of cities. Cities are primarily labor markets. And I think that this is a very important aspect that many urban planners forget sometimes, that most people go to cities to get jobs. And we go to city because of the people who are already there. And we need to be connected. Labor market is, in fact, connections. The second aspect is that cities are not the building, are not the infrastructure. Cities are the people who come here, and I will call that the spontaneous order. You know, the number of people who are in a city are not there because a planner decided that the city will be 1 million or 2 million or 20 million. They come here because they vote with their feet. And this is, again, what I call the spontaneous order. When they come to a city, they decide where to live, where to work, and every household, every family have a different trade-off. You know, some wants to be in their own community, people who speak their language. Other might want to be close to their mother-in-law, who will take care of their kids or something like that. Other will be very close to a school that they like or to their job. So again here, urban planners do not have this knowledge. All we have to do is provide an infrastructure so people have the freedom to move from one part of the city to another. So that's what I call spontaneous order. And finally, in the spontaneous order, also you have all the people who are excluded from a legal house because our standards are not adapted to the income of the lowest part of the income of the population. Our planners tend to to set standards, and they feel that higher the standard, they are more generous. They wish everybody would have those high standards. In fact, it doesn't happen, and then we end up with informal settlement, which again are more, are excluded, and including, by the way, if you live in an informal settlement, by definition, you're not following the law, and there is no way to apply the law where you live. Finally, a city still requires some top-down design. And the top-down design is for everything which is public land. So I make a very big difference between what is public and what is not. What is private, I think, is better dealt with the people themselves, and what is public should have a lot of action from the officials. You know, the way, for instance, how do you design a sidewalk? How do you design a pedestrian crossing? This, I think, do not get enough attention on the part of the planners. They spend too much time, I think, deciding the size of bathroom or things like that. So cities are primarily labor market. Again, this is the most important thing that how does a labor market works? It works if you can access the maximum number of jobs in less than 1 hour from where you live. And I say less than 1 hour. Ideally, it should not be more than 30 minutes one way. If you are in an area where you have access to very few jobs within 1 hour, half an hour, your salary will be very much reduced. We have seen that all the time. Or even then you will have a lot of youth unemployment, for instance, which is very common. And I think that's very much related to your subject. So I will explain very quickly how a labor market works in terms of transport and movement. So first you have the traditional monocentric model where most jobs and amenities are in the center, and so you have a high density in the center, lower density in the suburbs, and the people are commuting every day, you know, like a tide, going from the suburbs to the center. Now, this is relatively easy to manage in terms of transport because you have dispersed origin, but you have concentrated destination. So a bus system or subway works very well for that. However, this is a bit an ideal city. When a city gets more than 1 million people, this type of pattern doesn't exist anymore. Then you have another model that I call the dispersed model, which is mostly in North America, which, you know, cities like Atlanta or Los Angeles are like that. The jobs are completely dispersed in the metropolitan area. So the trips to go to job the origin are dispersed and the destination are dispersed. That's why public transit doesn't work very well in cities like Los Angeles or Atlanta or Houston. And that's why people have to take a car or a motorcycle to access jobs. Now, most cities are in fact like this composite model here, where in fact it's a superposition of the two models. You have in most cities an historical center which remain important in terms of jobs, but also amenities, restaurant, museum, the concert hall. But more and more, jobs are dispersing from the center to the periphery. This is something that I have seen all over the world. You know, it's not just in our continent or in Europe. You can go in Asia. Cities which were very much like this are becoming very much like that. To give you an example, in New York, which have in Manhattan, a very strong center traditionally with also jobs and amenity, very high concentration of jobs. In metropolitan New York, which are 21 million people, 70% of the trips are from suburbs to suburbs. So the trips are really trips like that rather than that. Only 30% of trips are within the center, the middle of Manhattan, or toward Manhattan. And I found, so this is rather striking, and it's something that planners have difficulties to deal with. You know, the transport for suburb to suburb is difficult. Again, the most convenient means of transport is a car, really. Except that the car is not a very efficient means of transport because it's too big, it's too heavy. It's a wonderful instrument to go for a picnic on a Sunday with your kids. It's not very good for commuting in a dense city. Unfortunately, we are stuck with this technology. However, I'm very hopeful now. A lot of new mode of transport are emerging. Something like Uber, for instance, but also micro-mobility, electric bicycle, all sorts of things. And we are at a stage where we are still finding our way how to use that to improve, again, the way the labor market works. Finally, I have here a model that do not exist, but exists only in the mind of urban planners and sometimes mayors. And it's an urban village. A lot of people who manage cities feel that this type of transport I have seen is very complex, and therefore they would like to solve it. And they say, well, if everybody was at a job just within walking distance in a large metropolitan area, it will solve the problem of pollution, congestion, everything. So let us design a city like that. Of course you cannot. If you come to a city like São Paulo, it's because there are millions of jobs there that you can choose for. If you lose your job, you can find another one. If you don't like your job, you can find another one. And it's the same for your employer, by the way. If the employer comes, it's because there's a huge array of talent there that they can draw from. So the idea that a company will move to São Paulo and say, we are going to recruit within 15 minutes walk from our company, doesn't exist. Now, this was, by the way, the campaign of the mayor of Paris, and she got reelected by saying, I'm going to go to do a big bang of accessibility and everybody will have a job within 15 minutes walk, not 15 minutes taking the subway, 15-minute walk from the thing. This, of course, do not exist. And so this, you'll say, why are you talking about that if it doesn't exist? Well, it's because a lot of people think it could exist. And instead of investing in transport, which will be efficient, to go from, let's say, the east part of São Paulo to the west part in less than 1 hour, they may think, well, we will manage the land use so everybody will work. So that in a way distract from the real problems. If we look at poverty, very often the dysfunctionality of transport within a large metropolitan area, fragment labor market in smaller one. And if, for instance, if I take the city of Mexico City, it's a city also 25 million people now, but it's practically impossible. If you live in the south of Mexico City, your labor market is limited to an area of few kilometers about, because of the transport is too difficult. You cannot, if you find your ideal job in the north of Mexico City, you have to change your house. You have to find a new house, which sometimes is very costly. You cannot do it. So that explains in a way unemployment, because again, the economy of Mexico is pretty dynamic, and there are jobs, but there are jobs which cannot fulfill. Also, you may stay in your job, not because you like it, not because you like the pay, but because it's only one accessible within your area. So if you, and this is in a way decrease it very much, then your productivity, your satisfaction of the job, and probably your boss will not be very happy either. So we are losing on both sides here in this case. So this mobility in a very large city is absolutely very important. So now let us look at this spontaneous order and the informal settlement. So first, spontaneous order. Here I have a number of 12 cities selecting all around the world, and I collected this data myself. This shows the densities, or density decrease from the center of the city from 0 to 30 kilometers, and the density is distributed by distance from 0 to 350 people per hectare. So you see here, those cities have nothing to do with each other. They are on a different continent, they have different history, different culture, Some are very wealthy, some are less wealthy. But they all follow one thing. You see that the densities all follow a gradient, negative, exponential gradient, and this is not due to planning. This is due to the price of land. The price of land gets much higher closer center because precisely you are close to jobs and amenities, theater, things like that, and it decreases with the suburbs. Now, so this is the spontaneous order. It comes from when somebody comes, say, to Barcelona here, depending on their income, depending on their circumstances, they will decide to live here, here, or here. And if they are in the suburbs, they will have, probably larger, they will have a larger house, probably consume more land. That's reflected in the density. But if they live in the center, they will have to live in much smaller apartment. And here is where very often then regulation take place, and it may change things, the way things are, or what is available. Here I have the same type of graph, but here prepared by one of my Brazilian colleague, Fernando Cotello. We have been in correspondence for more than 12 years, I think, and then we met finally in Rio just 3 days ago for the first time. But these are his graph, which reproduce a bit the previous one. So this is the density in Rio de Janeiro. In red, it's the average density in the favelas, and in green in the outside in the normal area. And this is the density in Sao Paulo. So again, horizontally, you have the distance from the CBD, vertically, the density. Now, be careful, the vertical scale here is not the same for all the graph. Here the density in Rio de Janeiro, it goes only to 700 per hectare, which is pretty high, where here for Sao Paulo, it goes up to 1,800, which is extremely high density. And here I have Brasilia. I will not discuss Brasilia because being a completely planned city, you have no spontaneous order, it's completely messed up. From Cotello also, Fernando Cotello, this is a graph. I'm not sure if the contrast is good enough, but it gives, this is Sao Paulo. It gives the densities, the height is a number of people, in fact, those polygons, those prisms, which are in height. That gives the number of people within the polygon. And then the color indicates the range of income. So the darkest color are high income, medium color are green, and the yellowish is low income. So you see immediately the favelas, and most of the favelas are in fact pretty far from the city. You see some isolated here. I have no idea where that is, or here. So extremely high densities here. So what happened here? Why do we have favelas? And why we have this kind of disruption in the thing? You can imagine also the accessibility to job in a settlement like this or this might be very, very difficult. So the favelas is in fact a safety valve. Urban planners establish standards, and when they establish standards, I'm one of them, by the way. I'm an architect and urban planner. I spend my life sometime doing master plan, and so the objective is to say, well, everybody in this city should have at least that, so it's based on need. Now, that's good and well. If the people do not have the money to meet those needs, then you may think, well, the government will take care of it. Now, unless you quantify it very carefully, who cannot afford the minimum standard? And if you say, we have the money so that within 2 years, Everybody who cannot afford a house will have one, and where they want, at the place they want. Well, this is fine, except that it's never like that. We establish standard, and even I will say there is a bidding process among professionals or political parties. You know, if a party say, well, the minimum say apartment should never be less than 50 square meter, there will be another party who will say, are you kidding? 80 square meter is what people need. And then you go on like that, and finally you are forbidden to build below these standards, but half of the population is left without anything. So this is a favelas, and this is in Rio. I took this picture 5 days ago with a helicopter ride there. The mayor was generous enough to, it was a wonderful experience. And so you see here two completely different, these are the legal standards. All these people here have a building permit, and those don't. But in terms of housing itself, the housing are not that bad in those favelas. What is bad is infrastructure. And probably the social infrastructure, the schools, the health center, do the people get vaccinated here? When there is a flood, do they get flooded, or even the house get carried away? All this could be solved. The role of the planner is not to tell you where to live or how much land or floor space you consume. The role of the planner is to make sure that wherever you live, you have a good storm drainage, and you have a transport to get to your job. So they should concentrate on all the public things and let people build themselves what they want and where they want. So in a way, I'm going to be a little technical here. I hope you will bear with me. Below here, I have a representation of the population of a city distributed by income. So horizontally here, I have income per year. And so imagine a slice here where you have, say, people here who are earning, for instance, one minimum salary, and then you have here people earning 2 minimum salary. And here is the number of households. So this gives you a complete image of the city distributed by income. Usually, most city will present income by 2 or 3 slices, or maybe 5, saying low income, medium income, high medium income. I think that this is not very useful, because those income are too aggregated. I think that somebody who earn a household whose earning is only 1 minimum wage is very different from one who gets half a minimum wage. It's not at all the same group. Now, when you are in the highest income, whether you have 20 or 30 minimum wage or 32 doesn't make much difference. So that's why I think we should have use this type of distribution to everything. Now, the graph above it, horizontally, we have exactly the same scale, household income per year, but vertically, we have on the market, what can you buy with this income? And so you have a curve here, which represents, again, it's an aggregation, it's a regression, what you can do. So for instance, if your income is D here, you are able to consume F or G. That means you can translate that either in a housing index, or let's say, for instance, a lot size that you can afford to buy. So if now imagine I am a planner, and I say, well, I start with a minimum legal consumption. I say, I want to be generous with those poor people. So I decide that they should have a lot of at least 300 square meter, and it will be forbidden to have anything below that. So I set that here, but if I draw a line down here, this area in blue represents the number of people who will not be able to afford that. So the government say, don't worry, we'll take care of you. We are going to build public housing. So if they build public housing, first, of course, they will never build enough because they never consider how many millions of people are here. So they will build depending on their budget. So some of the people who are here then will have a slightly higher consumption. Most of them will be on a wait list, maybe for 10 years, maybe 20 years, maybe never. So that doesn't solve the problem at all. On top of it, if they build public housing, the subsidy is linked to a type of housing and a location, which is not necessarily what the people want, depending on their access to job and things like that. And so if they leave the house, they leave the subsidy. So they will have a difficult thing. Also, in a way, it discourages the private sector from trying to build houses in this sector because they let the government take care of it. It's not a thing. And by the way, it will be legal anyway. Here is the distribution of income in Brasilia. So horizontally in kilometer from the city center, so just, the Here Monumental and with, the Plan Piloto, and here up to 39 kilometer. And the red colors are the highest income, and the dark blue are the lowest income. So it's evaluated here in minimum salary. My data here, as I collected it long ago, it's a little old, but I'm sure it has not changed. I even think that it is getting worse. So here you see a high concentration, the only high income in the center, and the poor have been pushed 30 kilometers away. And as you know, in Brasilia, there are enormous traffic jam in spite of the high number of very highways. There is one line of subway, but it doesn't go quite to the part which is here. And these are enormous areas which are not served by transport. So again, here you have a structural problem which will be long to take care of. And again, only to be very imaginative in means of transport, looking where the jobs are and where you can link that, that's the only way to solve this. So I'm going to make a little experiment here with I have to give credit to my colleague Pedro here, who is here from Florianopolis. 6 months ago, I was, he was making me visit Florianopolis, and we passed in this settlement, and he pointed to me how hard it was, this informal settlement. And we stopped very little. We had other things to do, but after that we continue exchanging data and things, and using Google Earth and Google Street View, it was possible to complete this thing. So it's this is an informal settlement. It's not a favela, it's kind of a low middle income, but it is people who live there because they cannot afford the minimum standards, although they are not poor, but they are not rich either. And so here you see that's a street built by the government, and this one also. And the rest are streets which are built by informal developers. By the way, they don't have access to formal finance because those are not squatters. People are buying the land from owner, but it's just a piece of paper. It's not because it's illegal. So this is the way it looks, and it's not yet completely occupied, but this is the way it looks, on Google. So what is very interesting for us here is that you have something which is built here without any regulation. People get what they can afford. And you see that the private sector is able to have within the same neighborhood a huge variety of housing. You have these relatively small townhouses here, and then here you have a big villa in the same neighborhood. You have a complete mix of income spontaneously, and which is exactly what we try to do. And unfortunately, when you build public housing, you have only one type of income together. People are, by the way, free also to open a shop anywhere or do whatever they do. You know, if they want to work on their house, they can do it. So, you know, you see here, if you free the private sector from the shackle of these crazy regulations, they will provide. You know, in other sectors, for instance, in food, in the same city, you have the private sector, they provide very expensive restaurants. You have middle, restaurant where so-so. You have fast food, and you have even food court. You have people selling food in the street. You have a complete array, of food. Why it's not the same in housing? Why it stop at a certain time? So let us see that a little more in detail here. This is a house of 70 square meters. You see the plan here of the house here up. This is the way it looks like. It is not a slum. It has water supply. It has a sewer. And the minimum regulatory size in this area is 360 square meters. So we are here at a small fraction of what is permitted. And certainly this person could not afford a lot of 300. So you see, it is again, there is a response to the private sector to that. There is another detail here, is that the pylon for electricity is inside the courtyard. I don't know how that come about. It's interesting. That's another one, on 90 square meters. So you see here, it's on 2 floors. The architecture is not bad at all. Again, we are far, far below the 360 square meter. And you see, that's the way it looks on the ground. It's a 2 townhouses. This is an interesting one because there are two dwelling units. You see the staircase on the side, and you see also there are 2 numbers for the house. So you have, in fact, 2 apartments on the same lot, which is 100. So that means about 55 square meters per person for a house like that, which is very affordable. And So here, if I go back to my graph before, we do not have yet all the prices. We are trying to collect that, but we haven't done it yet. And I think that if we get a price from what we see, we have here this minimum lot size of 360 square meters. So if I bring it here, that means all these people here cannot afford a legal house, legal standards. And I think that if we could represent when the population of which will be living in Rio Vermelho at the time, we will have, it will be about like this red curve. So I'm not so sure how high it will be or it will, but some of it probably, some of them are above, we have seen there are some relatively large houses, so some are above that. And this is exactly the type of community we want. We don't want a ghetto of only rich people or only poor people. And this, if you remove those regulations, this happens spontaneously. This is a demonstration of it. And again, Rio Vermelho is not a small area, a strange area. It's a very large area. When it's fully densified, Pedro, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it will have probably more than 200 or 300,000 people. Is it correct? Already 200,000, yeah. So when it's fully densified, probably could go to 500,000 because I will say about 1/3 of the lot are occupied, about that. When it's fully occupied, sorry. 200,000, yeah. So it's not a small token neighborhood, pilot things. It will be a serious part of the housing stock. So there are still some problem and again, the problem are not the houses. The problem is infrastructure. Now, all those houses are connected to a sewer. The developer put a sewer. You have also water supply. Unfortunately, because of the, again, the government there didn't do its job of dividing the land, separating what is private from its public. The infrastructure, developers are good at providing an infrastructure to connect the lots they develop. They are not very good, for obvious economic reason, to have main roads which connect neighborhoods together. So that creates a bit of a problem. Sorry. I'm trying to, oh, sorry. Yeah, and I didn't reproduce here the map, but what happened here that you end up with blocks which are sometimes more than 1 kilometer long. You have only one street. And you should have intermediate streets, so that when you design a sewer system, you want to have a lot of possible reconnection. You want a network rather than a linear thing. So it will create a problem of accessibility if you put some shops or a school in the middle of the settlement. The accessibility would be very difficult. People would have to go back to the main street and then back. So it could be that the school is within 200 meters for a house, but it will take 2 kilometers to get there because of the... So again, here, there is a failure of government. And from what I understand, all this sewer, which is connected to a main, but the water is not treated because, it was not supposed to be developed. So I think here the lesson is that this settlement is spontaneous order. The job of the government is to connect it to the rest of the city, to treat the sewer, to provide the social services. Whether the people consume, have a lot of 80 square meter or 200, doesn't matter. They are human beings, they are a citizen of the city, and they deserve these things. So very quickly then I will, you see here I go back to Barcelona, Cerda, where this was Barcelona when Cerda created it, and the genius of Cerda and Barcelona at the time was to develop, separate what was private from public, in a very large area. So you have a land market which worked because if they had developed this just around it, the land here would have been very expensive. In a way, it would have created a monopoly for the landowner who were just there. By doing that, if the land is too expensive, you can always move, and then it creates really a market because you have a lot of players at the same time. So this is Barcelona now. So you see, the streets are exactly the same as usual, as they were designed by Cerda. But now inside the block, you see the market have played, and it's much more complex. You have all sorts of uses. I will go rather fast here. This is a new neighborhood in Shanghai. When I was working there, you see there was a river, the Huangpu, which is pretty wide, and there were no bridges. There were only ferries. So the other side of the Huangpu was completely empty. Practically rice paddies or some warehouses. Within 30 years, and actually it started happening in 10 years, the government was able to build roads, tunnel, bridges, subway, and develop this entire area suddenly. And that created, that's the city of Pudong, but in the back you have enormous area of housing. Suddenly the supply of housing was flooded, and it lowered the price, make it more accessible. But especially, this is a subway which was developed entirely in this subway now is 800 kilometers long in 30 years. 30 years ago, there was no subway at all. So you see, all this area, this is the river here, the Huangpu. All this area has been developed in 30 years. And it means again that everybody who live there is part of the labor market. And part of the economic success, I think, of China in the last 40 years has been this ability to develop an infrastructure, very fast. Now, not everything is perfect, of course, but there are some dark corners. But this is really, I think it's an example for us. It has nothing to do with being an authoritarian regime. It's just, their ability, they are fantastically good at logistics. So this is my conclusion, that the current planning process, as it is, and I'm not talking about Brazil, I'm talking about the world over, because it's exactly the same in Europe, it's the same in many cities of Asia. The process increased poverty by establishing arbitrary standards. I call that magic numbers, which are, like the 360 square meter in Florianopolis. It's a magic number. There is no scientific way of doing that. And it forced, low-income households in informal and illegal settlement, which are isolated from the labor market. And it failed to provide accessibility. And so that's my conclusion. There is a lot to do, but I think that it's my second this year trip to Brazil, and I feel very hopeful. I have been talking with mayors and city councils, and I think a lot of people are completely realize the problem, are ready to. Now, it's not easy to change those things, but I'm very hopeful about it. Thank you very much.